I have listened with much interest into the various discourses as it relates to Black lives, the movement Black Lives Matter, and its connectivity to all the other Black struggles of yesteryear. I seem to have noticed that something is glaringly missing, absent. I have listened to our intellectuals. I have listened to the ordinary man in the streets. And I still notice that something is escaping our notice. When I look at the progress that or the gains that we have made from the time of slavery through colonialism to the independence of Black nations, I have observed one thing that is very common throughout all those experiences. And that is, we gain very little by just intellectualizing, begging, and talking. Let's be clear about one thing. During our enslavement, the slaves were at no time happy about their conditions. They were enslaved, and they were always angry with their enslavers. It is clearly demonstrated in the songs that they sung and the resistant movements that they have created. But it did not get them anywhere. Something had to give. And it's very obvious that they knew what would suffice. And so they resort to burning down plantations. They resort to physical violence where it was possible with their limited resources militarily. But it yielded the best result. After much burning down of the plantation, we know emancipation was proclaimed. Slavery came to an end. Not without much sacrifices, though. We can think about the many prominent Blacks across the Caribbean, many of whom had what we could describe as privileged positions on the plantation. But they resort to violence, burn the plantation down. Freedom ensued. And I noticed that in all the discourses that have been taking place, I've watched some of the most known names of Black men and women on CNN. I've seen them on BBC. I've seen them on local news and television here in and across the Caribbean. And everyone seemed to be supporting this notion that we have to beg on our knees for the final leg of our journey toward freedom and equality. But I beg to differ. It is true that our economic situation can be of great help. That if we select where to spend our money and with whom to spend our money, that will help. but very slowly as well. Why should a white police officer, in the name of the law and a badge worn on his shirt, be allowed to kill a black man, and the law does not see fit to penalize him, or even if they penalize him very softly? I dare to say that the old adage, life for life, must be considered. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's recorded in the Bible, the most sacred book for the Christian world. And even in non-Christian books, that same principle is reiterated. So I dare to say that until black men began to take lives of those who take their lives, equal things out, things will never change. Things will never change. When a white person can look at a black person, lynch them, kill them, kneel on the neck, and their families are allowed to go on living, while another person's family, the black family, is made to suffer for the loss of the life of their breadwinner, their husband, their father, we're wasting our time. We are wasting our time. And you can understand why there is no disincentive on the part of white police officers and other whites to do anything about this matter. Some thought it is encouraging to see the number of white folks who are joining hands in the Black Lives Matter movement and marching and protesting in the street. While that is encouraging, the question is, what is being done about those who still maintain that black lives doesn't matter? Because that is where the problem is. There are enough of those persons who believe black lives doesn't matter in the world that police officers from that group, judges from that group, Congress people from that group, presidents from that group can easily stand and sit idly by while black lives are being snuffed out at will by persons who feel that our lives doesn't matter. So I am making the case that until our black men and women begin to stand up for their rights, not just marching in the street and protesting and wearing banners and slogans, until they are made to feel exactly what we are made to feel, I think we're wasting our time. So think about it. If the families of those killers are made to pay, if the killers themselves are made to pay, I bet that you will begin to see immediate and drastic change. We learn about Black Wall Street, destroyed completely by whites who feel blacks should not be economically enfranchised. We learn all the efforts that are being made to ensure that blacks do not progress. The bad advice given by financial institutions to black government. The cruelty inflicted on countries that labor and toil for their independence by those who are their colonial masters, that continue to use us to subsidize their economies. At present, weak governments that are fighting for economic development, continue to suffer the knees of rich white countries calling themselves the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. They keep on putting their symbolic knees and our symbolic necks. And every time we try to make progress in our offshore sector, what do we find? The OECD shift the goalpost. This is a case where white supremacy at its various levels and dimensions are determined that blacks should not develop to the point where they can be equal citizens of this planet. And we have to recognize it for what it is. And like a Calypsonian said, how many more? Are we going to continue to do the same thing, the same way all the time and expect that we're going to get different results? It is not going to happen. So we need to get tough. We need to get serious. I have noticed that the white world is seriously afraid of the Islamic world. These persons who are not afraid to defend themselves, who are not afraid to strap explosives on their body and go and blow themselves up and blow up others, they don't mess with these guys. But for some reason, the Christianized black world seems so desperately afraid to die, so we sacrifice nothing. So it's either we are determined to make serious sacrifices for our freedom and the freedom of our children to come, or we are going to continue for the next century to talk, to march, and to beg for our freedom. Let us be clear on this. We are all children of the universe. We are no less than the trees and the stars. Whether we're black, white, Indian, Syrians, we're all children of the universe. And we all have a right to be here. So in the words of the great leader of Jamaica, Michael Manley, I'm calling on black people the world over to stand up for your rights. Let us stand up, all of us, for our rights. Claim our place in the world, in the universe. And stop allowing ourselves to be targets of those persons who just want the practice of seeing how someone dies. And I can assure you, if we are serious about this, that our condition will be changed almost instantaneously. So until we talk again, I want to beg of you to consider those points of view. Feel free to give me your feedback, share your comments. I know this sounds radical, this sounds against the norm, but let's never forget, that is what has always worked for us. And that is what is going to continue to work for us in the future. We can't just keep talking. Those to whom we are talking have very little heart or no heart at all. Very little hearing or they're deaf completely. But guess what? Their sense of feeling is alive. So just as we feel, they should feel. And that is do for do. And I can assure you that we're going to find our place in the world. We're going to be respected as equal citizens of the universe. So long. God bless.